Habits come in many different shapes and sizes. We have habits that do us good and we have other habits that are not so good for us. Why is this, and what can psychology tell us about increasing and experiencing some new good habits and reducing our bad habits? Hey guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched. If you've been enjoying the videos, then you can hit that subscribe button and you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and you'll get weekly reminders of every time I upload. But as for this week, we're going to be taking a look at the psychology of habits. Now, a few months ago, I actually did a video on GetPsyched about how to make habits stick, or some of the top tips on making habits stick. And I'm going to attach a little link just above my head here that you can access that video on. I decided to do this video as a kind of follow-up to that video because I wanted to look a little bit more into what exactly psychology said about habits. I wanted to know more about what habits were all about and how we can increase our good habits and reduce our bad habits. And I wanted to communicate that information about what I knew, what I had researched to you. Now, if we want to change a habit or we want to introduce a new habit, then we need to know exactly what habits are. There was a very famous study conducted in psychology in a psychological context a number of years ago that stated that in order for a habit to stick, then we need to perform the action or perform the habit consecutively, consistently over a 66-day period. Now, this exact same psychological study said that a habit was fundamentally an automatic behaviour done due to the frequency in which it's performed. That fundamentally means that we develop habits due to the frequency with which we undertake them, with which we practice them, or which we experience them. Now, this is true, of course, but habits actually encapsulate so much more. Now, that same researcher who conducted that study that said that habits, in order for them to stick, had to be done consistently over a 66-day period, stated that a habit was an automatic behaviour, or an automatic behavioural reaction that has been achieved due to the repetition of it. He stated that the repetition creates an automatic connection between the behaviour and the situation. This fundamentally means that when you find yourself in that specific situation, you automatically conduct that behaviour. Now, we can understand this in a little bit greater depth if we think about a sporting or professional athlete context. Athletes train themselves to experience and expect different circumstances or different situations when they're playing a game in order for them to still be able to undertake an appropriate behaviour that they've practiced. People like professional footballers or professional basketball players are able to conduct behaviours, ways of shooting the ball, ways of kicking the ball, that they have practiced over huge periods of time in a really short situation in a live game. So the pressure could be really high, the situation could be a high pressure game, yet that athlete is still able to undertake a performance to really high accuracy because of how much they've repeated the practice, how much they've actually practiced it. And that's what this researcher is going into. He's fundamentally saying that in order for a habit to be created, in order for us to have habits, we have to repeat the action over and over again. Now, Charles Duhigg, in his book The Power of Habits, states that habits actually have three different aspects. They have a cue, an action, and a reward. So we can understand from that explanation as well that habits actually have a number of different characteristics. And we can also understand that understanding a little bit more about what a habit actually is can help us in developing new habits that we want to undertake. For example, if we think about Duhigg's three aspects of habits, we can understand a little bit that doing a load of sit-ups each day may not actually develop that new habit to do sit-ups. What we need instead is to create the appropriate environment. We need to create that situation that automatically makes us do those sit-ups. It becomes, in that case, an automatic behaviour, and that's exactly what a habit is. So we've gone into a little bit of an understanding as to what exactly a habit is and how that might help us in attributing and creating new habits that we want to take on. But how exactly do habits develop? This kind of is connected actually to our definition and our understanding of what habits are. It explains a lot to us about why people create or start new diet plans and actually don't stick to them. And it also helps us understand as to why people go to the gym for a number of different weeks but don't consistently go. They never actually develop those actions into habits. Now, if I give you a little bit of my own insight, a little bit of my own experience as to how I've developed certain habits. I create an environment when I wake up to conduct the way in which I want to conduct it. Now, if I give you the example of days in which I film GetPsyched videos, what I do is I get up pretty early in the morning and the first thing I do is I read through my scripts. Now, I normally bulk shoot videos for my YouTube channel. I'll maybe shoot 3 or 4 videos back to back in the one day. It means I don't have to record every day. But over that period of time, I've actually written a couple of scripts. So the first thing I make sure to do is I read through those scripts once. After that, I then go and make myself a coffee, and I come back to my laptop and I do a little bit of my own work. I do a little bit of emails, a little bit of assignment work, some other things as well. What I'm doing here is I'm creating the environment in which I can get ready to film my GetPsyched scripts later on that morning. I do the same when it's just a normal day. What I'll do is I'll get up early again and I'll do some work immediately. The first thing I do is I get on my laptop and I answer some emails and I do a little bit of work. I then have a shower and I get my breakfast. And immediately after I've done that, I pack my bag for the day. I make sure that I have absolutely everything I'm going to need: food, books, laptop, everything. And I also pack my gym bag. In doing so, I'm creating a cue. I'm also creating an environment and a context for which I know that I'm going to the gym later on. In undertaking these actions, I'm actually setting up a series of cues that are helping me to perform my habit later on in the day, which is go to the gym. Now, a lot of the time, one of the misconceptions about habits is that we create one cue, and that cue is a trigger to help us know that we need to undertake that habit. What actually is more effective is if we have a series of different cues. And that's what I try and do in this example, both for the days that I film my GetPsyched videos and the days that are just normal days for me when I'm doing my work. I have a number of different cues that I undertake that help me get into that context, get into that mindset, and create that environment that help me undertake the habits that I want to undertake. And we can use this analogy and illustration in a little bit of a deeper context as well. Let's think about brushing your teeth, for example. You don't always brush your teeth every time you go into the bathroom. Just like you probably don't brush your teeth every time you're in bed in the morning just because it's the morning. And for you, brushing your teeth in the morning probably is an automatic habit. But in order to undertake it, what needs to happen is you have to have a series of multiple cues. And these cues have to be recognizable for you to undertake that habit, in this case, brushing your teeth. And largely in the case of brushing your teeth, you have to be entering the bathroom and it has to be morning time. That's quite general, of course, but you get an understanding of where I'm coming from. There has to be multiple cues in order for you to undertake a habit. And in psychology, they call this chaining. And a lot of psychological research actually goes into the power of chaining and how we need more than just one cue in order to undertake habits that we want to develop. That same research actually goes into a little bit of detail into how important environmental cues are in undertaking good habits. Psychological studies can actually enlighten us a great deal about the power of habits and how we can develop new and lasting habits. There was a recent study actually conducted about flossing. Now, this study had a number of participants in a control group, a number of participants that flossed before they brushed their teeth, and a number of participants that flossed after they brushed their teeth. And what they found after a number of months was the people that flossed after they brushed their teeth flossed more regularly. Now, this was all to do with cues. They flossed more regularly because brushing their teeth was actually a cue to floss. The people that tried to floss before they brushed their teeth in the control group did not do as well. This shows us a little bit more about how psychological studies can actually inform us about the power of cues and why we need cues in order to undertake habits that we want to develop. So what does all this mean for you? If you want to create a new habit, a good habit, then you have to create and utilize multiple cues. Also, don't forget that psychological study that we talked about earlier that stated that often what we have to do is show consistency in our habits for 66 days in order to make them last. We also need to give saliency to environmental cues. We need to create an environment in which we undertake those habits. Think about that sit-up example I talked to you about. It might not be that good just to do a bunch of sit-ups and hope it becomes a habit. What you actually have to do is to create an environment, create a situation that makes you automatically do those sit-ups. That's basically what a habit is. In large, this actually can be an example as to why some people find it so hard to work out during the weekends. Even though there's more time available, some people find it harder to work out during the weekends than they do during the week when they might be busier. And again, this has a lot to do with cueing. Some people go to the gym as soon as they wake up. Some people go to the gym as soon as they get off the bus after work. During the weekends, they don't necessarily have the same cues or the same chaining of cues that encourage them to automatically undertake those behaviors. So what about bad habits? Well, for the majority of this video, we've actually looked at how to develop good habits. But what about breaking those bad habits that you want to change? Well, like many things, the first step that we have to have is to understand the origin of that bad habit. There also needs to be a little bit of an appreciation here, for me anyway, that there are not things as just black and white. Things are not just bad habits and good habits. There's a continuum, there's almost a scale as to how bad certain habits are and how good other habits are. And there are going to be some habits that are harder to break than others. Part of the reason as to why bad habits are so hard to break is that receptors in our brain still give us that feeling or that desire of undertaking that bad habit, even after we've tried to quit. So we really are up against it when we're trying to break bad habits. Like I said earlier when I was talking about good habits, one of the things that we need to have in order to understand how to break bad habits is to know a little bit more about their triggers. Biting your nails, smoking, drinking may all be associated towards stress, for example. Understanding, like I said, the origin of that bad habit or what's causing that bad habit is really key to breaking that. And once again, environmental contexts are actually important here too. For example, if you want to break the bad habit of just getting home after work and only watching TV, one of the things you might want to change is the environmental triggers that are causing you to watch TV. Maybe when you walk in from work and you see the couch and you see the TV, you just automatically sit down and start watching. What you might want to do is to change the structure of your living room, for example. Change the environment, change the situation, and in that way, the bad habit should be easier to break. Now, this might all sound great, but how actually do we put these principles into practice when it comes to breaking bad habits? Well, the first step is to be more concrete with exactly what it is that you want to change. Understand the cues and the origins of the bad habit that you want to change, and develop a substitute plan. Having these bad habits are there for a reason. They help us or protect us against situations that we're finding difficult. And if you don't have a substitute plan that you can put in the place of that bad habit, then you're really on your way to making things much more difficult. For example, people who smoke, when they quit smoking, they might take up chewing gum all the time. That's a pretty vague example, but it gives you an idea that we always need a substitute plan for whenever we break a bad habit. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching. This week we've been looking at the psychology of habits. We've been looking at developing good habits and breaking bad habits. Thanks so much for watching. If you've been enjoying the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and you'll get weekly reminders every time I upload, and hopefully catch you next week.